because the spirit never ages. The joys of life are edgeless, ageless. Out of every boundedness, they flow with ease, with light and sound, color and consciousness. When you can awake each day with spirit, bring to your day a lively eye, a lively heart, a lively mind. Engage and behold the wonders, great and small, old and new. The everywhere beauty, innocence, serendipity. From the wild green majesty of a forest to the wild blue bounty of an ocean, to the wild white poetry and purity of snow-capped mountains. When you can rise and breathe in the fresh air of possibility for deep feeling, wholly loving, inner peace and outer harmony. Whoever and wherever you are, however long you've lived or may be living in the world, because the spirit never grows old, despite the body's waxing and waning, never fades or slows, only shines, sings forth readily, only flows timelessly, freely and ever joyfully, upon your inviting, upon your allowing. Welcome to the latest floating poetry broadcast, and thank you for leaning in to show 123 in my ongoing weekly series, coming to you live from the spirited ocean state of Rhode Island. This is your poet and poetorialist Colin Goedecke, a voice for living our days more fully, more alively, more poetically. In broadcast 122, we entered the secret. From the secrets we're told, or keep, or reveal, or wonder about in the world, to secret places we go to, or encounter, or hear about, to the nature of secrecy itself, secrecy and mystery of many intriguing kinds. This week we're musing on the spirit of places, of nature and the animal kingdom, of the earth itself, of people, of cultures, countries, eras, of humanity, and not least of ourselves, the pure, distinct, and dynamic spirit of each of our beings. So, let's enter these and other dimensions together through a zest of cultural commentary, poetry, inquiry, and shared discovery. Let's begin with some stirrings. This is a poem from Kitchell Pond in the Lewantaka Brook Reservation, Morristown, New Jersey, 2017, spring. Everything is stirring. The tender new leaves of the trees, emergently green. The white feathers of the wading egret. The hems of the high-towered clouds. The wildflowers bright underfoot. The senses. The spirit mirroring. This next piece was part of a arts festival that I was invited to and had a show at, an outdoor show. It was the Hopewell Tour des Arts in November 2019 in Hopewell, New Jersey, down by Princeton. And it was done with imagery, sound, poetry, other elements around a big bonfire out in the fields. And this poem was the lead poem for the event. Around the fire, where the light dances on a circle of faces, where the heat toddies the spirits and all close-gathered bodies, where, since epochs and eras long before Native Americans honored the four winds under new and full moons, before the Zoroastrians lit the great fire at Yazda, that glows on millennia later, before the Druids, Bedouins, even before Apollo and Vulcan, Ogun, Fuji, Agni, and Granus, Pele, and Mishquatl. When early man made fires in the green dark hearts of forests, in the open mouths of sheltering caves, where across all human time voices, songs, music, drum beats, and heartbeats rose with the sparks, cinders, and smoke into the sky, toward the sun by day, toward the distant listening stars by night, of lilting kinds, offering, celebrating, and other anciently sacred wordful and wordless kinds, where some of our own ancestors once surely stood or sat, meditated, chanted, or danced with wild abandon, naked or painted or hatted and coated, till the last of the embers died out, gave way to the great silence and stillness of the earth around them, of the vast and mysterious world folded and unfolding around them, where we can gather, go further in, invite and embrace our own kindling, crackling, blazing from the center of our beings. Let forth our own fire to reach and touch, light and warm every circle of our lives, our living, all our making, all our loving. Around the fire. Spirit of the Rye. This is for very dear friend, soul sister Nicole Centeno. Woman of 100 grains, source of the bread of good words and deeds, flowered from the heart. Hardy bread that feeds souls, sons to strangers. Woman of sprouting ways, who thrives through times, places, weathers, and cold winters, bringing fields of gold and green to life and savor. Beautiful woman, long and slender, earth lover, seed sower, nourisher, sun catcher, deep-rooted spirit of the rye. This is a poem for Aaron Kallenberg in Alaska. A special K. Rare Homeric spirit, fished from Alaska's wild and wild cold waters. A soulful Kallenberg floating, musing, becoming among the pure ancient icebergs, alpenglow, auroras. Sung to by the salmon, the sockeyes and silvers, kings and pinks. Attuned to their beauty, the wisdom of their ray-finned ways, their deep-natured sermons, now leaping into another year, another place and sea of dreams, desires, and journeyings, of blue-bright days, man-made creatings, and new-made discoverings. Spirit, vital essence, from Wikipedia. In folk belief, spirit is the vital principle or animating essence within all living things. As recently as 1628 and 1633, William Harvey and René Descartes still speculated that somewhere within the body, in a special locality, there was a, quote, vital spirit or vital force which animated the whole bodily frame. People have frequently conceived of spirit as a supernatural being or non-physical entity, a demon, a ghost, a fairy, or angel. In ancient Islamic terminology, however, the term spirit applies only to, quote, pure spirits, but not to other invisible creatures such as jinn, demons, and angels. The The concepts of spirit and soul often overlap, and some systems propose that both survive bodily death. It came etymologically from Middle English via Old French esprit, and its source is Latin spiritus, and the original meaning of that was breath, breathing, and hence spirit, soul, courage, vigor. So, spiritus, distinct from the Latin anima, which also was related to breathing, but was come to mean more of the soul. The classical Greek had a distinction between soul and spirit, in each case involving, again, an etymological sense of breathing. So, the image for the show, the man and the tree, well, on a sacred note, I suppose we could say there's my friend there, Richard Allen, in Wilcox Park here in Rhode Island in Westerly, man of Maine, who was visiting me, and a man of great spirit. And he spoke to me of the violet flame, and I just wanted to mention it partly as about him, and because it's interesting, and I didn't know a lot about it before he told me. And this is from violetflame.com. Discover Saint Germain, in French Saint-Germain, the wonder man of Europe, father of world freedom and the Aquarian age. Well, they say here the idea of the spiritual brotherhood affects people deeply. What if we could know the ascended masters today? What if it was possible to read about their stories in history? And how would they help mankind? We know the stories of Jesus and Buddha. Is there a master who faced a modern culture like ours? Well, apparently there was this figure. He was a count, Comte de Saint-Germain, a world legend, the real deal. Well, I'll just read you a slip of this. The history and interactions of the Comte de Saint-Germain with the courts of Europe are written about in documents, letters, and autobiographies from the 18th century and beyond. The famous French philosopher Voltaire called him, quote, the man who never dies and knows everything. Spiritual seekers discover more in the story of Saint-Germain than a simple historical curiosity. He was a mysterious gem of spiritual authenticity and true mastery, the wonder man of Europe. He was known in every royal court, was not only able to speak flawless French, English, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese, but was an expert in Greek, Latin, Arabic, Chinese, and Sanskrit, played the violin, quote, like an orchestra, wrote poetry with one hand while writing letters with another, and mesmerized the courts with stories of the past, told as if he lived through those times or could read some invisible record. Day and night he worked as the beloved mysterious healer who visited the poor and helpless with secret herbs and remedies. He rescued the poor and wealthy alike, spreading his gospel of brotherhood and goodness. So if you're interested in reading more about him, there are things out there, including the ways to visualize the violet flame. There's animism, of course. I've spoken of this at other times, but it's apropos for our talking about spirit. It's the belief that objects, places, and creatures all possess a distinct spiritual essence. All things, animals, plants, rocks, rivers, weather systems, human handiwork, and even words, as animated and alive. Well, I think we could also say that there is a frequency, there's a vibration to everything, every single thing. And so I think we could tie maybe those things a little bit together in our mind. It's said to describe the most foundational thread of indigenous people's spiritual or supernatural perspectives, and it encompasses the beliefs that all material phenomena have agency, that there exists no categorical distinction between the spiritual and physical or material world, that soul, spirit, or sentience exists not only in humans, but in everything else. So, I, of course, am one of them. Maybe you are too. I'm a confessed or professed animist. I also wanted on this live cast to mention spirit of place. Obviously very important to many, including indigenous people, but also creators, poets, certainly myself, especially of nature, and I'm often drawn to places that I feel are resonating, especially to me, with spirit, and to connect with that, gauge that. spirit of place, or soul of a place, refers to the unique, distinctive, and cherished aspects of it, often celebrated by artists and writers. This is Wikipedia once again. And also cherished in folktales, festivals, and celebrations. It is thus as much in the invisible weave of culture as it is the tangible physical aspects of a place, monuments, boundaries, rivers, woods, rural craft styles, pathways, and so on. Or its interpersonal aspects, the presence of relatives, friends, and kindred spirits. Well, the Roman term for this, you may know, is genius loci. A newer layer of embodied superstition on the subject has arisen around ley lines, feng shui, and similar concepts. That's sort of the origin. And modern earth art, sometimes called environment art, you have Andy Goldsworthy, I'd say was one of the great examples of that. If you don't know his work, it's absolutely fascinating and ephemeral. Have explored the contribution of natural ephemeral sculpture to spirit of place. And of course, many indigenous and tribal cultures are deeply concerned with spirits of place in their landscapes. Shinto has its kami, and the Dvarapalas and Lokapalas in Hinduism, and Vajrayana and Banpo traditions. So, yeah, there's a wealth out there of these connections. Here's a poem by David Orr, apropos. It's called Daniel. On the day we moved in, the pings, bumps, and snaps were scary. It's true, but probably normal. A house accepting new patterns of weight with protest, the way no conviction goes gently. We laughed a little and called it, quote, our spirit. Later that night, when the power conked out and the kids were crying, the ghost got a name, Daniel, and a history of whispered exploits, all of them harmless, like nursery rhymes or like the little fibs we tell ourselves to explain why this or that has led to suffering. Pretty soon we were using him for everything. When the Christmas tree fell, it was Daniel. When my wife lost her ring, it was Daniel. When the kids forgot to feed the goldfish and it turned up dead, its eyes silvered over like water shadowed under sheets of ice, well, that became Daniel too, which was curious, and pauses me now as I make the long walk down the hall to the bathroom in darkness, and hear, in soft concert, the sound of my footfalls answered at once by my children's voices, still calling to Daniel behind their door. Thank you, David Orr. It's a poem of mine about a spirit of a particular place, a joyful spirit, in the old part of Amsterdam, the Netherlands, where I'd stay with extended Dutch family over the years. This is 1998. Zonnestralen. Beams of sun rise to the ceiling, raising all spirits and the rafters in this tree-top bower, where warm rays give solace to any gloomy days or clouded hours. Yellow beams, the color of fresh butter and garden roses, the color you're sure happiness is made of. I'm gonna edit a bit on the fly because I have so many wonderful things to share, but I don't think we'll get to them all, so I'm going to take a few things out as we go. Maybe come back another time or another program where it might fit. From creativespirits.info on Australia's Aborigines and spirit, the land is part of being, family. Aboriginal spiritual beliefs are intimately associated with the land they live on. It is geosophical, earth-centered, and not theosophical, God-centered. The earth, their country, is, quote, impregnated with the power of the ancestor spirits, which Aboriginal people draw upon. They experience a connection to their land with the entirety of nature that is associated with it, that is unknown to white people. A key feature of their spirituality is to look after the land, an obligation which has been passed down as law for thousands of years, which makes me think, of course, of the Native Americans and caring for the next 7 generations. Land joins the commonly cited trilogy of being. Quote, to recover our well-being, we have to pay attention to all 4 dimensions of our being, mind, body, spirit, and land, explains Uncle Bob Randall. Land is seen as a family member. Spirituality is about tapping into the still places I go to when I'm on country, and I feel like I'm part of all the things around me, explains Senemilia Kingsborough from the far north Queensland Yarrabah community. Quandamuka woman Evelyn Parkin also values the silence which connects her with the land. Quote, the spiritual contact with Mother Earth holds me in my place. Joy Harjo's poem, Don't Bother the Earth Spirit. Don't bother the Earth Spirit who lives here. She is working on a story. It's the oldest story in the world, and it is delicate, changing. If she sees you watching, she will invite you in for coffee, give you warm bread, and you will be obligated to stay and listen. But this is no ordinary story. You will have to endure earthquakes, lightning, the deaths of all those you love, the most blinding beauty. It's a story so compelling you may never want to leave. This is how she traps you. See that stone finger over there? That is the only one who ever escaped. Thank you, Joy Harjo. That's from Secrets from the Center of the World. Wonderful, wonderful collection. Well, oh yes, I do, dear listeners. I do have questions for you, for us, about spirit. I'm curious about how your spirit is moving you these days, and how it has moved you significantly earlier in your life, and what came about as a result. How has your spirit vitally infused or uplifted others? How are you keeping your spirits up amidst the unsettling and often dispiriting state of our world? What do you do to preserve them, to soothe them? Trying times aside, what or who best or greatly nourishes your spirit or animates it? What connections have you felt or made with the spirit of nature? Maybe the wind or the sea, some part of the land, the animal kingdom, with the spirit of a place from your present or past, or a house you may have lived in or once lived in that had a resonant essence. How do you or would you define the universal human spirit in your own words? How would you describe the spirit of this age we're all in, this era, from wherever you sit, the way you see and feel it? How would you describe your own spirit, its essence, its shape, color, intensity, beauty? And was it always constant, or is it different now? How do you feel about spirit guides? What guides of this ethereal kind have appeared, if they have, in your life, in your waking or dreaming life? And who's the most beautiful or indelible or inspiring spirit you know of firsthand or ever knew? What did they touch, awaken, or alter inside you? Dear listeners, may we do our best to ever witness, affirm, and honor the gift of our own and each other's pure spirits, the vital spark of each of our beings. I'm graced, as some of you know, and grateful, very grateful to have many beautiful spirits in my life, near and far, vivid friends, soul brothers and sisters and others. Who are yours? Here are a couple of mine. This one is for Zdenka Jakezevich in Malta, the island of Malta. This is called In the Kingdom of Z. That's her nickname, Z. An archipelago of faraway history and mystery set in a deeply blue sapphire sea, where there's a hymn, El Innu Malti, and an ancient sign language, where Phoenicians and Moors, Normans and Sicilians came and went along with red and white knights, lives a mosaic spirit with a soul of honey and haven, heart song and beauty, who, in the alphabet of all possibility, adds to her sunlit kingdom a strongly defined and crowning character. Sometimes when I compose a poem for a friend's birthday, I also summon events and other things at play in the year they were born, which also gets me to dive into some history, and discover things I didn't know about. The spirit of a given time, a given year, and of course adding my own poetic twist, like this one, Our Man Orzo, for Tom Orzo on his 64th birthday. The $64,000 questioner and answerer, the man of the 16th day, 2nd month, hour of now, A.D., ecum spiritu tuo. A king of heart, a prince of spirit, a noble friend rarely found, rarely born, sharing this date with history and destiny. When the silver dollar became legal tender, the Studebaker brothers began making wagons. The tomb of Tutankhamun was open sesamied way down in Egypt land. Nylons were patented, raising the allure of Western women and the libidos of its men. When Fidel became poster boy for communism and Cuban cigars, a Chinese emperor ying-zonged out of an imperial womb, followed by a long-nosed Prussian duke, a mutton-chopped English explorer, by zoologists and eugenicists, occultists and ventriloquists, actors and crossword compilers, guitarists and fighter pilots. A cast of countless characters, colorful and each in their own way remarkable, not least our man Orzo. This next one is for Nadia Cohen, my friend from my soul sister and friend from Zimbabwe. Water spirit. Remarkable a person she is and spirit she is. Water spirit. I know you are one. A naiad in only slight disguise. A spirit and body that knows its way, finds its way through many other waters, sweet but smaller. Swims through deep wells, hidden springs, and dry spells. To the sea. Always at last and best to the sea. To that precious, boundless source of your solace and aliveness. Yes, a flowing water spirit, a salty wonder of a woman, worth discovering, worth honoring, worth mythologizing. When, dear listeners, you open your whole self out to be seen and felt, and whenever others do this, isn't it amazing? Isn't it all the more vivid, more satisfying, more indelible, more memorable? This is the spice, the zest, the seasoning, the piquancy and pungency, tang and zing of being. From ancient to present, redolent time. When you bring the spice of your body and spirit, the beauty of your taste, and most, to the table of your life. I was thinking of all kinds of peoples, of tribes and societies, present and past, imbued with exceptional spirit. One group I thought of as the Gypsies, and I have a piece about them. This was also a poem for an event that I choreographed. Incredible, memorable dinner, poetry on the plate dinner. Some of the other things I get up to for 24, and it was called the Table of the Gypsies Feast in the Ironbound section of Newark back in 2019, in the spring. So think perhaps as I share this piece with you about groups you know of, maybe have encountered in your time or travels with remarkable spirit, whether they're tribes or cultures or whoever they were. This is the Romani, Manush, Gitanos, Zingani, who move nomadically, meanderingly, 1,000 years west from an Indo-ancient place to an old world, to this turned page of time, in constant, curious ways, who freewheel, forage as they go, tell fortunes, dance with abandon, through forests and cultures, living on game and wild greens, berries and nuts, bread and stories, who cook slowly in cauldrons on wood fires, under the sun, under the stars, sometimes a hotchi, eating with earthy hands, the better to flavor each feast with, however meager or kingly, whose women wear bangles of gold, headdresses of coins, men headfuls of clouds and flames, heartfuls of ji, who marry in exuberant ceremony, tables bending under the weight of the wedding food, who embody universal balance, like flightful birds, above and below, and song, slow, wistful songs, fast-played melodies with clacking tongues, clapping hands, spirits akimbo, invoking the great gypsy, Django. So a toast to the spirit of those people, still out and all over the world. Rob Bresney from his astrologyzone.com. The factor most likely to drive us to addiction or illness is a lack of intimate contact with spirit. We all need a daily dose of vastness. Paradoxically, many of us would also benefit from more microscopic vision. Because we're so deprived of divine connection, we're half dreaming all the time. Our unconscious pining for the eternal source distracts us from the vivid little glories that are splayed out around us. And so we miss the divine wow from both directions. Try this. Prime your connection with spirit by focusing your attention on tones and shapes you usually miss. Reflections in windows, the sky between the oak tree's branches, the shadows on the water, the two different emotions in a friend's eyes and mouth. Thank you, Rob Bresney. Wildly Alive. This is a poem from my experiential exhibition Behind the Curtain, exhibition of theater on paper, and it's one of the characters brought to life and their story poem. Wildly alive. When you feel yourself fountaining, feel your whole body celebrating its aliveness, when your spirit opens to its native expressiveness, when your limbs are all akimbo, your spirit all a dance, appassionato, when your feet are so light as if floating, and your heart so full of heat, supernovaing, your eyes bright with inner sunlight, as you bring everything out in every way without crescendo or diminuendo, to being freely, wildly in this moment. Are you ready to be wildly alive? Maybe you already are. If so, bravo, brava. Carolyn Miss, or Mice, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I've heard it both ways. She said, what serves your spirit enhances your body. What diminishes your spirit diminishes your body. Okay, I wanted to share with you a comment from John W. Gardner's book. He's the author of Excellence. His book is called Self-Renewal, The Individual and the Innovative Society. He was a pioneering social scientist and spoke about how to keep your work and your spirit alive over the long run. And I just read this one piece, one slice. The renewal of societies and organizations can go forward only if someone cares. Apathy and lowered motivation are the most widely noted characteristics of a civilization on the downward path. Yeah, there's more to that. You can actually find an interesting review of it from The Marginalian. Self-renewal. You can look that up. Well, we talk about things that inspirit us and lift our spirits, and there are things, of course, that really challenge them. Certainly these times, I know for many, are extremely challenging in our present time. And, of course, people all across history and the things they had to go through, especially wars. So here's something that's sort of a down and up. This is about the beginning of it is about a dispiriting, and it's on the theme of love, the spirit of love. It was an experience of mine of a very deep heartbreak years back, 2016. I wrote this because events like this, like a broken heart, the death of a loved one, can really take us for a ride in not happy directions, losing the flow. For one who bathed body and spirit in its free-form currents, breathed in its fresh rushings, who lived and fished, loved and dreamt for lyrical years along its soft green banks, losing the flow, the natural course, wild coursing of a great river, comes as a bewildering surprise. You watch, amazed, dazed, as the water recedes. Then how you begin to devitalize like the earth before you that dries and cracks. Witness the water flowers wither, the birds and fish disappear, taking their bright songs and buoyant gestures with them. Feel a knowing, dispiriting take hold, a growing emptiness you can't reverse. Experience your once flush, daily quenched feelings of desire, delight, wane, drain away like the whole vanishing river. You hang on, try to, for a time, caught in the loss, held in a hard press of longing, disbelieving, until the last remaining hope of this dear river's return evaporates. And you gather your parched, puzzled self and depart to seek out a new oasis, a life-giving source of another kind, to flow through the next seasons of your life, to keep your body, your spirit likewise, vitally streaming and ever moving, ever dreaming toward the sea. I asked earlier about a spirit you have or had in your life who was inspiring, who was inspiriting. Here's a piece of mine about the kind of person we all welcome, especially in hard or dark times in our days or lives. The heart lifter. The one you want around when your skies are cloudy and gray, when your spirits have fallen to record lows, when you've forgotten your beauty, all the bounty alive inside you. Living Tree by Robert Morgan. It's said they planted trees by graves to soak up spirits of the dead through roots in the growing wood. The favorite in the burial yards I knew was common juniper. One could do worse than pass into such a species. I like to think that when I'm gone, the chemicals, and yes, the spirit that was me, might be searched out by subtle roots and raised with sap through capillaries into an upright, fragrant trunk and aromatic twigs and bark, through needles bright as hoarfrost to the sunlight for a century or more, in wood repelling rot and standing tall with monuments and statues there on the far hill, erect as truth, a testimony, in ground that's dignified by loss, around a melancholy tree that's pointing toward infinity. Thank you, Robert Morgan. Beautiful. There's a wealth of wonderment, of spirit present and emanating from the earth, from Mother Earth and all that lives in nature, to the elements and to the heavens, for us to behold, to be with, to be filled with. Be still and listen to what the earth below your feet is singing, to the stories the young and old swaying trees are telling, to the conversations of the hawks and the herons, the whisperings of the planets and stars, the jubilations of the sun, the rain, the ocean waves. Be still and listen with your spirit's ear to everything of note that's here, all ready to be heard. I was thinking of many beautiful animals, and of course some that became extinct that we'll never know in person, never see, feel the energy up close of. I was thinking of a piece I wrote for a beautiful animal of our country, of the United States. This is called The Great Head. Once upon a time you saw it, sculpted on the surface of coins, or gazed upon many from the windows of a lone train steaming in black and white across the great plains, as they and their muscular bodies grazed, roamed, sometimes thundered in massive herds, dark shoals over the grasslands, or stood unseen by men in the depths of winter, turned straight and steady into the wildest wind blasts, fiercest blizzards, each great head, mighty shoulders, bearing a natural kind of nobility, solidity, like the surrounding mountains, like the big sky mountains of white marbled western clouds, serving unknowingly as a sacred symbol of abundance and fortitude for a native people, as a spirit of raw strength for a pioneering nation, as a mammoth woolly mascot for a Kansas schoolboy in Emporia, who mused on one often as it gazed out from the sun-rayed wall of his humble school hall, its broad, horned head held high, the monumental, unshakable American buffalo. There is the spirit of love I was touching on a little bit before that we should speak a bit more of, I feel. The flame of the heart and heart's meeting. This is Mary Austin's poem, Neither Spirit Nor Bird, a Shoshone love song. Neither spirit nor bird, that was my flute you heard last night by the river, when you came with your wicker jar where the river drags the willows. That was my flute you heard, Wakoba, Wakoba, calling, come to the willows. Neither the wind nor a bird rustled the lupin blooms. That was my blood you heard answer your garment's hem, whispering through the grasses. That was my blood you heard by the wild rose under the willows. That was no beast that stirred. That was my heart you heard pacing to and fro in the ambush of my desire to the flute's four-noted call. Wakoba, Wakoba. That was my heart you heard leaping under the willows. Thank you, Mary Austin. The lovers. Across deserts and oceans, behind stages and curtains, they find their way to each other, bring the gifts of their loving bodies together, lips and longing spirits together. Let the winds of their shared desire undress and caress them, carry them off into bliss, into ecstasies. Natalie Handal, Handal, love letter. I'd like to be a shrine so I can learn from people's prayers the story of hearts. I'd like to be a scarf so I can place it over my hair and understand other worlds. I'd like to be the voice of a soprano singer so I can move through all borders and see them vanish with every spell-binding note. I'd like to be light so I illuminate the dark. I'd like to be water to fill bodies so we can gently float together indefinitely. I'd like to be a lemon to be zest all the time, or an olive tree to shimmer silver on the earth. Most of all, I'd like to be a poem to reach your heart and stay. Thank you, Natalie Handal. Robert Henry was a marvelous painter and extraordinary teacher of art back in the early 1900s. This is from his book, The Art Spirit. I go back to this so often, this book. It's a collection of his lectures to his students. Robert Henry, Henri. He said, do whatever you do intensely. The artist is the man who leaves the crowd and goes pioneering. With him there is an idea which is his life. Well, I love those words and as a creator, as an artist, but I think it applies to all of us, actually, to go pioneering in that spirit. I had a few pieces I was thinking of sharing about artists, and I'm just, again, keeping a good eye on our time. But I'll read you one I wrote for Michelangelo. Buonanotte, buonanotte, for Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni. For now, for this moment, man of poetry, of deep-drawn beauty, made of marble, subtle inks, vibrant pigments, elements, figurements, by such seeing eyes, seeing hands, art made and eaten with the heart, evoked here with flowing cups of wine, grateful plates of festive food, night-sung song, as a celebration of you, Michelangelo, your tastes, table, and the touchable spirit of Rinascimento, ready to come alive again in many mouths and marveling minds in this hungry for transcendency world. Rob Bresney once more. Why is it so hard for Westerners of the last 2 centuries to feel the intimate presence of the divine intelligences? Every other culture in the history of the world has had a more vital connection with the realm of spirit. According to poet Gary Snyder, California's Yana Indians explained it this way. The gods have retreated to the volcanic recesses of Mount Lassen, passing the time playing gambling games with magic sticks. They're simply waiting for such a time when human beings will, quote, reform themselves and become real people that spirits might want to associate with once again. Yeah. So, if there are spirit guides, I think we should be interesting to them. Yes. And there's a poem, I won't read it now because we actually, there's not enough time and space right now, but it's Edgar Allan Poe's poem, Fairyland. You could actually find that at the poetryfoundation.org. And likewise, Billy Collins has a wonderful, whimsical poem, Questions About Angels. Definitely look that up if you're interested. And I will read, however, Judith Ortiz Cofer's poem, Women Who Love Angels. They are thin and rarely marry, living out their long lives in spacious rooms, French doors giving view to formal gardens where aromatic flowers grow in profusion. They play their pianos in the late afternoon, tilting their heads at a gracious angle as if listening to notes pitched above the human range. Age makes them translucent, each palpitation of their hearts visible at temple or neck. When they die, it's in their sleep, their spirits shaking gently loose from a hostess too well bred to protest. Thank you, Judith Ortiz Cofer. Consider, my friends, how vital and beautiful your spirit is, no matter what, and sacred in a certain way, I would have to say, all of ours. This is called spirit, the sacred flame that ignites your entire body, all the days of your living, all the joys of your loving, the sacred water that streams, gleams in glorious ways through your heart, in endless ways from your soul, the sacredly spirited you. Salt and Pepper by Samuel Manash, M-E-N-A-S-H-E. Here and there, white hairs appear on my chest. Age seasons me, gives me zest. I am a sage in the making, sprinkled, shaking. Yes, as we said, things can get difficult in our lives or troubled in our hearts, our minds, but let us remember, blood freezes at -3 Celsius. Tears freeze at -30 Fahrenheit. Everything freezes except the spirit, which never freezes, never hardens, never deadens or ages, no matter the depth of our winters, the sudden plunge of our emotional temperatures, or the sometime extreme coldness, seeming frozenness of the world around us. Let's stay focused on keeping our internal, eternal, sacred, bright flame of spirit going, and focused on the possible versus the impossible, on our rising versus our falling, led by that spirit. This is your phoenix is rising. It was actually written on Labor Day, 2016. Of course, we just had Labor Day here a few days ago. Your phoenix is rising. Add your telling to Ovid's, Dante's, and Pliny the Elders, but of your own sure rising, rebirthing, regenerating. From the ashes and embers of your last life chapters, there are great combustions, sparked reformations. Rising now with a nimbus of rays sunning forth, jewel-bright eyes, as Lactantius described, and a crest of wild feathers, into a liberating life, as a being of light, solarity, possibility, longevity, as a spirit of authentic mythic proportion, freeing your wings, taking flight into a newly boundless future. One more Mary Austin. This is from the Navajo, Prayer to the Mountain Spirit. Lord of the mountain, reared within the mountain, young man, chieftain, hear a young man's prayer. Hear a prayer for cleanness, keeper of the strong rain drumming on the mountain, Lord of the small rain that restores the earth in newness, keeper of the clean rain, hear a prayer for wholeness. Young man, chieftain, hear a prayer for fleetness, keeper of the deer's way, reared among the eagles, clear my feet of slothness, keeper of the paths of men, hear a prayer for straightness. Hear a prayer for braveness, Lord of the thin peaks, reared amid the thunders, keeper of the headlands that uphold the earth in harvest, keeper of the strong rocks, hear a prayer for staunchness. Young man, chieftain, spirit of the mountain. Thank you, Mary Austin. Thank you, Navajo people, for that. Beautiful. And let us feel, too, into the finer spirit of our shared humanity, which I believe could take us to a place of much needed regenesis, renewal of all kinds, collectively. Our humanity. It's a call. What we belong to, what we can point to out there around us, and what a singular gift, our innate sentience, deeper humanness, shared with 8 billion other souls and bodies, what we can rise to in here if and when we choose to or are moved to. Summon the truer and fuller humanity that, whether clearly or obscurely, resides so surely within each of us, whether it's eager or reticent, lost or longed for, sleeping or awakening. I remember ceremonies that began in the dark of a church or a country field, a first candle being lit from a source, and from that first lighting to the other held by the person beside, then each holder in turn letting their flame light the next and next until all were aglow, until we soon cascadingly formed one immense body of light, a bonfire of human kindled kind, reflecting spirits, reflected in eyes, beaconing a remembering out, sending a hope-filled illumination out into the unseen and unknown, the same way the flame of your humanity and mine, instead of flickering alone, can be lit, fed, combined, and enlarged, can join the wicks, the rising spirits of all those who, from where we stand, we cannot see or know, but can feel in the center of our chests, enough to create a great forest, a great sea, family of uniting, igniting humanity, a shared light rise, the greatest that people of any time in history or memory have ever known. A conscious joining, generous emanating of human light, benevolent light that brings wanted, beyond needed solace, strength, and wordless togetherness forth to soothe the heart and smooth the future of the trembling world. Gleanings by David Shimoni. Shimoni. Silence and aura, an ancient Yemenite woman gathers dry branches for a bonfire. Her bent back between the green of grapevines darkens and gleams in autumn sheens. Her dusky grandson with curly earlocks grasps in midair branches of a fig tree. A slice of black bread is between his teeth, and his nimble fingers pick the last of the fruit. A bird is broken out of the thicket of fig tree, chirped suddenly into the quiet of world, dropped to warm earth, and pecked the breadcrumbs fallen below. I, too, have joined the gleaners, Silently as I lie on the vineyard hill, I will furtively glean myself remnants of summer, sheens of harvest, delicate, serene. And next to last, Lost in the Milky Way by Linda Hogan. Some of us are like trees that grow with a spiral grain as if prepared for the path of the Spirit's journey to the world of all souls. It is not an easy path. A dog stands at the opening constellation past the great helping hand. The dog wants to know, did you ever harm an animal, hurt any creature? Did you take a life you didn't eat? This is the first on your map. There is another, my people made of the great beyond, that lies farther away than this galaxy. It is a world that can't be imagined by ordinary means. After this first one, the next could be a map of forever. It could be a cartography shining only at some times of the year, like a great web of finery, some spider pulled from herself to help you recall your true following, your first white breath in the cold. The next door opens and old woman counts your scars. She's interested in how you have been hurt and not in anything akin to sin. From between stars are the words we now refuse. Loneliness, longing, whatever suffering might follow your life into the sky. Once those are gone, the life you had against your own will, the hope, even the prayers take you one more bend around the river of sky. Thank you, Linda Hogan. And last for now, X marks the spot. Every place on the map where you go, have been, or dream of voyaging, hunting for buried treasures of the eye, the heart, with an urging, emerging spirit, is a place you mark, invisibly but indelibly with your own precious, sometimes mysterious energy. Imprints that others, forward and backward in time, who cross them, feel a frisson of charged, changed particles, molecules, that waves underfoot, moves up through their bodies, weaves through the passing air. Well, I thank you, each and all, again, for leaning in, listening, and spiriting in, and for sharing these broadcasts freely with others, for sharing your thoughts back to me, as you're moved to do, and to contribute. All of this helps keep my spirit going and these shows going and inspiring many ever farther and ever wider. If you have a suggestion, compliment, or question, send me a note to colin@thepoetorialist.com. You can contribute if you like in any amount, any time. I would welcome that by Venmo to Fivefold, FIVEFOLD at pipeline.com, or by PayPal, or by mail to me at P.O. Box 1032, Westerly, Rhode Island 02891, or through my site, thepoetorialist.com, in the Donate tab. Now and then, patrons can also host me as a working poet in residence on a given property for a given time in a given season to create a new flight of poetic art and dedicate it to them. Simply email me and we can explore the possibilities. Meanwhile, you can hear all the broadcasts online on YouTube on the Floating Poetry playlist. I hope you'll lean in soon again. Until then, dear listeners, feed the great flame of your spirit daily, your vital spark, so it burns ever more brightly and freely inside you and inspires others in the world around you. Sense in more keenly to the spirits of the animal kingdom, this living earth, the unseen world. Let your spirit move you as it can in powerful and beautiful ways. Goodbye for now. And yes, good spirits.